Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Cole, that's my name, and this is my channel. And today I've got another review for you. This is going to be a little different. This is going to be my first kind of Western comic review, or at least like Western comic solo review. And it's one I've wanted to talk about for a while, or one I've had feelings about for a while. And that's going to be the Angela miniseries from Image. It's a 1994 into 95 three-issue miniseries, really four issues if we're talking about this collection that I have here. And it's basically her original solo outing when she was still owned by Image. Um, for the uninformed, Angela, who many probably now know as a Marvel character, one of the inspirations for this video was that I was recently playing some Marvel Rivals, and I realized they added Angela to Marvel Rivals, which I was really excited by because I'm a huge fan of the character. I'm not so much a fan of her Marvel stuff as I am of her original Image and kind of Spawn universe stuff, which is why I wanted to talk about this. But for people who don't know that kind of stuff, maybe this could be a good little intro, and we'll talk about this book, and maybe you'll pick it up and read it, or maybe just hearing about Angela's story a little bit will be of interest to somebody. The other thing that inspired me was, and I don't think you guys can see it um, in the camera right now, my buddy Ethan, who I do a lot of videos and whatnot with, kind of all over different channels, Boss Nasty Gaming, this channel, Spillage Studios. He recently went to a toy show and he bought me an Angela figure. He knows I'm a big fan. This thing is a beast, and honestly, it's definitely not the greatest figure in the world. It's an old '90s relic, I believe, of McFarlane Toys, but it's definitely cool to have as a fan of the character, and kind of a nice pairing piece to this Angela miniseries here. And this is a book I've had for a little bit of time. I initially got interested in Angela, and I'll be completely honest, because of another comic book show here on YouTube. It's called Back Issues. It's probably, I would say, not probably, it is the best comic book show and comic book channel on YouTube. That's Comic Pop, their show Back Issues. Sal and those guys over there today do an amazing job. If you want to hear a real breakdown of this story, maybe you aren't able to find the book itself, I found my copy on eBay. That's a great resource as well. You can go watch the Back Issues episode. But I do implore you to read the book first before doing that, or even maybe before watching the rest of this video. But I'm going to try not to spoil too much, because I would like people to read this, because I think it's kind of a forgotten legacy of this character. Essentially, the backstory is you have Todd McFarlane. He created Spawn and the Spawn universe over at Image. Image Comics, for the uninformed, cropped up in the 90s. It was the first kind of independent, creator-owned comic book publisher, and it was kind of a rejection from a bunch of artists and creators of the kind of Marvel DC landscape, and kind of getting screwed over by contracting and stuff like that. And it still stands as a huge pillar of comics today, especially independent and creator-owned comics, because the way it works at Image is the stuff that you create at Image is your intellectual property. Image is just the publisher, which I still think is a super awesome thing that they do. I believe it still stands pretty much like that to this day. I could be wrong, maybe correct me, but that's what I believe. But that's where the kind of complications of Angela's story come in. There's actually a really wonderful kind of foreword in this Angela volume that I have from, I believe, one of the editors over at Image, that kind of explains the backstory of this volume itself, or at least the issues in this volume, and a little bit of the other history kind of coming up to 1995. But essentially, when Todd McFarlane was writing Spawn, he was also drawing it, and he would have other writers come in, and other artists, and etc. And for Spawn issue 9, he brought in Neil Gaiman. Now, I know there might be some controversy around Neil Gaiman. I don't feel comfortable speaking on it. I don't know all the details. So we're just going to talk about the story and the character Angela here, and we're going to kind of leave that all aside for the time being in this video. But Angela's a character who's always kind of struck me. I watched the back issues on this series many, many years ago. Then I ended up reading the series. I also just think she has a wonderful design. In this, she's depicted by the legendary Greg Capullo. Some people might know him more famously for his New 52 Batman run with Scott Snyder. I know he's been doing some Marvel work as of late, but Capullo is one of my favorite comic book artists of all time, so this was a must-have for me. And I also just think Angela has a great, really cool design, and I like the Spawn universe. I think Spawn itself is kind of ups and downs as far as writing, but the art is always amazing. I mean, Todd and all the other artists he's brought through Spawn are all masterclass comic artists. That much to say, in after Angela debuted in Spawn number 9, She was kind of a breakout character. People were really excited about her, and they say in this that they were asking Neil Gaiman if he would write more. So he did, and he agreed to write this three-issue kind of miniseries on Angela. And Greg Capullo was just coming through Image at the time, and Todd was really impressed with his work. So he put him to work on this Angela mini. And they also explain in this something I didn't know or didn't remember since the last time I read it, that Angela actually sold really well. They even short printed issues 2 and 3 because it was selling so well to kind of drive up demand for Angela. And there's actually a fourth issue in the back of this. There was kind of an Angela special they did because all of those sold so well. I think the really pretty thing or cute thing that they write in the beginning of this kind of that kind of forward is they explain, or this editor guy is explaining, that they felt bad that people wanted these comics so much and the scarcity was going up because they only printed so many of them, that they ended up printing this trade, which this trade I do believe is a 1995 trade. It's in pretty good condition, all things considered. I was really happy to get this one. The art in here is just amazing, and honestly the print quality is really good. Not to say anything, I don't have many vintage Image comics, especially vintage Image trade paperbacks, but the art in here is just absolutely amazing. But yeah, as far as like its connection to the Spawn universe and the story itself, the quick breakdown of the 3-issue mini story, which is the kind of main essential story, is Angela. She's an angel from heaven. Heaven in the Spawn universe is this weird bureaucracy. I kind of love it. It's one of my favorite aspects of the Spawn universe, and it's why it's such a shame that Angela is no longer a part of it. And real quick, I'll just kind of explain. So, because Neil Gaiman technically owned Angela as his own intellectual property, I believe he had some kind of falling out with Todd McFarlane, and he eventually sold Angela to Marvel, and that's why she now exists under Marvel. I think she's like Thor's sister or something in the Marvel universe. It's not the worst thing in the world, but I definitely prefer her in the Spawn universe. It feels more natural. She feels like kind of a shoe-in at Marvel, which I think, as opposed to DC, because DC is more of an amalgam of characters grabbed from other places. Marvel is kind of all created under one roof, so it is weird when they have those kind of shoe-in characters to me. I'm still glad that Angela exists. I'm glad that people are enjoying her, and I think Marvel Rivals is a great boost to her kind of image as a character, no pun intended. But still, I definitely prefer stuff like this. Also, I'm very biased because it's Greg Capullo. I will be super honest. And because I've just had this comic for a long time, it's something I've never really gotten to talk about with anybody else because nobody else has really read it. And I really enjoyed it. As far as like, it really shows off some of that bureaucracy of kind of heaven in the Spawn universe. Because essentially the story is Angela's out, she's on another planet, she's hunting like a dragon or something. And, her thing is she's a hunter. Like, she hunts hellspawns, but she also likes to hunt other beasts and, like, big game across the universe. It's very cosmic, too, which I really appreciated. A lot of Spawn stuff sometimes is more Earth-centric. Not all of it. It gets cosmic as well. But especially a lot of early Spawn is more centered on that kind of Earth stuff, from my recollection of it. And I like that this gets, like, really cosmic. She's out slaying dragons on another planet or something. She gets called back to heaven, and she's basically being accused of hunting Spawn, the main Spawn from the main universe, without a license. Because of Heaven's bureaucracy, you need a license even if you're going to go hunt Hellspawn on Earth. I think it has something to do with, like, angels being on Earth. You have to be, like, there has to be, like, some kind of registry of them doing things. But so when she attacked Spawn in Spawn number 9, basically the bureaucracy of Heaven, whoever her boss is or her higher-ups, are accusing her of treason and hunting without a license. She also has a cast of other angel friends who are like, they come to her apartment and they try and like help her out, and they're like, Angela, we know there's no way you would ever hunt without a license and all this stuff, and she's just like not having it at all. And so basically it's a story of her going to clear her name and find out what this weird corruption is. And also it involves Spawn, because through this she kind of can't teleport back to heaven, or she teleports to Earth at one point, and she runs into Spawn. They get caught up in kind of this conspiracy together. The two of them end up in hell in the second and a little bit of the third issue, and they kind of have this little romance going on. It's another thing that I think sucks about Angela leaving the Spawn universe, because she's a great romantic interest for Spawn as a character, because it's kind of the Romeo and Juliet of like heaven and hell like coming together. I think that part of it is actually like really interesting, because they do get a little busy when they're alone together. But it's kind of like a matter of circumstance type thing. And then they get back to the plot, and I won't spoil too much, but of course, essentially, she clears her name, and there's a whole conspiracy behind it with the bureaucracy of heaven that I find really interesting. I like that idea that heaven is this like Byzantine bureaucracy of corruption and social climbers and all that stuff. It's really like almost too interesting for the base concept of everything, but I really love it. And again, the art is just stellar. I have no bad things to say about it. I highly recommend if you can track down this volume or some version of it to do that, because I definitely think this is a good read if you're into Western comic books, if you're into Spawn, if you're interested in Angela and where she comes from. This is probably, like, to my knowledge, some of the best Angela content you can get, drawn by one of the best comic artists, in my opinion. This volume, at least if you get this trade specifically, also contains the Angela special, which is like a micro sequel to it, because in the beginning of the Angela sequel, she's like referencing the stuff that happened in this previous story, and she's talking to Spawn, but it then turns into a flashback where she fights Pirate Spawn, because for those of you who don't know about the Spawn universe, there's been many Hellspawns across time, mostly a way so that Todd McFarlane can make toys out of them, but we get to see Pirate Spawn in the Angela special, and the art is still amazing. It's kind of a very short little, like, Angela explaining how she's fought and hunted Hellspawns before. But again, it's more like cool, interesting expansion of her character, and what have you. So I definitely highly recommend the Angela miniseries by Image if you can track it down. I don't know what forms it might come in today. It's probably not in print anymore, but I don't think there's a huge demand for it, to be quite honest with you. Maybe there is, and I don't know. Maybe this is worth a lot more, but my copy is a little beat up because I like to read my books. All that suffices to say, I'll say my review of Angela, and I'll give you a completely fair review, even though I've been glazing it a lot. I would say it's about a 7 out of 10. I don't personally think a 7 out of 10 is bad. 7 out of 10 is something that I would read, and something that I would even read again. The art really bumps it up, and I think, honestly, Neil Gaiman is definitely a better writer than Todd McFarlane. Again, I don't know enough about the Neil Gaiman situations that I've heard inklings about, so if there is something with him as far as personal life, I am not aware of that. I'm just saying I think actually his writing stands up a little bit more to me than Todd's. That's all I'm saying with that. So I would say, yeah, 7 out of 10. Recommend if you can find it, track it down, and read it. If not, your next best option is to watch the Back Issues episode on Comic Pop about it, because that's actually where I discovered not only this story, but this character. And Angela has been like kind of my little niche comic character that I'm super interested in. Honestly, I'm more interested in Angela than I am in Spawn. And maybe I'll read some of her more modern Marvel stuff, and we'll do a little follow-up to this. But I hope maybe this turned you guys on to something new or something you didn't know before. If it did, leave a like, comment, subscribe if you liked any of this. If you'd like to see more, I have some other more semi-obscure stuff in my collection that I'd love to talk about, and some non-obscure stuff, because I just want to talk about this stuff and get it out of my head. I'm sure a lot of other people feel that way. But that's all for me today. Thank you, folks. Peace.